Is it possible for the Toronto Raptors to acquire Deandre Ayton this offseason, especially following the Phoenix Suns' epic collapse in the Western Conference playoffs? Ayton's a 7-foot, 23-year-old center that has a strong touch around the rim and is a phenomenal defender that a lot of Raptors fans think could be the perfect fit for our young core to face off against the other big men in the Eastern Conference. So I'm going to dive into whether or not acquiring Ayton would be possible, what we'd have to give up, and my actual predictions for the Toronto Raptors moves this offseason in the front court. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, breaking down our first little bit of off-season content. We got a lot of players, a lot of topics, rumors that have floated up the past couple of weeks while Riker and I recover from that heartbreaking playoff loss. We thought we were going to get the 3-0 comeback, but we're talking Deandre Ayton. We've been watching other series, and the Phoenix Suns had a brutal second round loss after being up 2-0 against the Dallas Mavericks. They ended up choking, and Deandre Ayton in those games, or specifically the game 7, got a little bit in confrontation with head coach Monty Williams. Reports are he only played 17 minutes in that game, and there's reports that he's a little bit disgruntled by how Phoenix has been valuing him, and the coaching staff been utilized and stuff. Obviously, he was sort of a focal point, more of a focal point in the offense before Chris Paul came along, sort of took that second star role behind Devin Booker. So it's a weird situation in Phoenix, and this entire season, people have been talking about Deandre Ayton could potentially be gotten on the open market because they didn't give him one of those, following your third season, NBA season, it's usually when teams give you the contract extension. But however, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, for people that don't know, Sarver, notoriously cheap. Canadian basketball fans know this, probably following the Steve Nash days. They ended up giving up Joe Johnson for essentially nothing, letting him walk because they didn't want to pay him, and Joe Johnson would have been a perfect complement to those Steve Nash-led space and pace teams, but I digress on that point. So a lot of people think that Ayton could be out the door there in Phoenix because the Suns don't want to pay him, especially after an embarrassing collapse, and that's led a lot of Raptors fans to speculate whether or not we could pick up this guy. And as I said in the intro, right, he fits our young timeline. He's a young player in this league. He plays defense. He has the energy. He can touch around the rim. And the Raptors don't have that 7-foot big man. Even though I've been pushing the Precious propaganda all year, there's still people who haven't heard the rings or the noise of the marching band of the propaganda because they want a true 7-foot center. And Gobert's a guy we made a video on. I don't think we'll talk about him till we get closer to the season, unless new reports come out. We brushed over one that I think came out from Mark Stein. Apparently might be interested in him again. But Deandre Ayton's a guy that I'd actually be comfortable with us getting, in a vacuum, right? No trades, no free agents. I think he'd be a really, really nice fit on this Toronto Raptors team. But obviously, there's things you have to give up to get him. And that's where the realism comes in with this. And even if the Suns may let him go, let him walk, or look for a sign-in trade, I don't expect that the Raptors really have any play. Because you look at Deandre Ayton, his stats, right? He's gonna be getting some serious dough on this open market, likely a max contract, 17 points per game, 10 rebounds, super young. So it's a player that whether the Suns pay him or not, he's gonna get that money on the open market. And the Toronto Raptors have a lot of guys on roster that Fred VanVleet, he's gonna be a free agent in a year or so. Likely he's going to command more money than his $20 million per year contract status is currently at, just being an all-star and all that sort of stuff. So you got to pay Fred. Pascal Siakam on a max contract. OG Anunoby just signed a upper teens, low 20s million dollar deal as that contract goes along. We have Scotty Barnes I know last year was just his rookie year. He's still got 2-3 years left on that rookie contract, and then you got to extend him 3 years. 3 years left. My math is not there right now, but Deandre Ayton, he'd command a lot of money. And our star boy, Gary Trent Jr., he signed a contract extension last year, paying him upwards of, higher teens in the millions of dollars as well. And he's a guy that he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of next season as well. So bringing in Deandre Ayton paired alongside this core, not to mention Chris Boucher is a free agent this year. Thaddeus Young, if you want to pay those guys. Precious Achiuwa is a player that's, you got to look at, you're going to be giving out those max contracts. You got to piece all that together long term. You're going to have to pay Ayton, and we won't be able to keep that whole core together. So that's one thing that has to be brought up. So if the Toronto Raptors are going to acquire Deandre Ayton, it's going to be in a sign trade. We aren't going to sign him outright straight up. No way, Jose Calderon. It's not going to happen. So a likely sign and trade, because I don't expect the Raptors giving up an OG. Definitely not a Siakam. Definitely not a Fred VanVleet. You listen to those outgoing interviews. If you listen to those Masai Ujiri, Nick Nurse talk on this team in the post-season pressers, I don't know what to call them, but they essentially said they're keeping that main core together. But there was one name, and obviously Scotty Barnes is untouchable. I'm not trading Scotty Barnes for nothing. Maybe no one. Scotty Barnes is our guy. But the one guy that was sort of left out of those summer discussions, the guy that I just mentioned is a free agent, is our star boy Gary Trent Jr., who himself had a massive season this year. Played tremendous for the Raptors, 18 points per game himself, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, was phenomenal in the playoffs, shot 38% from behind the arc, and the thing that really just stood out to every Raptors fan this season is the level of defense Gary Trent Jr. played, right? 1.7 steals per game there, but really the on-ball pestering, everything he was doing. He's the guy that was sort of left out, weirdly enough. He was also a young player in those postseason pressers from what Masai Ujiri, Nick Nurse had to say about this team, and that led some speculation as to whether or not they might have a move for him, whether or not they see him as a long-term piece, given he's a free agent next year and he's obviously going to command a bag. So if Masai Ujiri thinks that the Raptors don't see Gary Trent Jr. as a piece long-term, could he potentially be in a sign and trade with the Phoenix Suns? I think he's a player the Phoenix Suns would love to have, right? Having a third scorer that we've seen, right? Obviously, Devin Booker is extremely consistent and stuff, but Chris Paul is getting older. They might want that third scoring punch, as Mikal Bridges is more of a 3-and-D type of player, not really a shot creator, right? They have a couple centers already on the roster. They're multi-time champion JaVale McGee, Raptors legend Bismack Biyombo, Dario Saric coming back. Maybe they see that as expendable. They want another shooter coming back on this team because we've seen Chris Paul go through cold stretches, which clearly happened in Game 7 of the series playoffs. So maybe that's a piece cheaper for Sarver. That could be an interesting route. And then maybe you factor in a Gary Trent Jr. You think Boucher is gone. You piece those two guys together. That's a pretty solid return on a sign and trade for Deandre Ayton if I'm the Phoenix Suns. So if they do want to go the sign and trade route, I think that's a route the Raptors could go. However, me personally, I don't think that would be smart. And I said this in our postseason presser. I want Gary Trent Jr. on this team long term. I think a guy that shoots threes, plays defense, is so young himself, and showed so much development ever since you acquired him. Why on earth would you give up on this guy for a guy that's not a part of the culture, doesn't has had his ups and downs, might be a little, I've seen some rumors, some drama that he stays up all night, plays video games or something, so he's fatigued. I don't know about all that, but Gary Trent Jr. just seems like a Raptors culture guy. I like Gary. And the big thing about it too is, and you look at Deandre Ayton's stats, right? It might be a little bit deceptive, given the fact that, 37% three-point shooter, right? Gary Trent Jr. is a 38. Deandre Ayton has not taken that many threes. He's threes per game, I doubt, would be even 0.1. It's not on, obviously, the stat that I got up, this graphic I got up on there, but he's not a three-point shooter. So you're getting rid of floor spacing, which we saw didn't kill us in the playoffs, but it was clearly visible, especially when Gary was out. Fred VanVleet wasn't looking like himself. And Scotty Barnes, right, our focal point of the offense, is a guy that's still developing that jump shot. You want to keep the floor spaced for him. So I don't know if it's the perfect fit to be dumping out a bunch of money, giving up a bunch of assets to acquire Deandre Ayton, right? In a vacuum, I'd love to compliment him, fit him right in, but giving out our best shooter and then probably a guy off the bench that's a three-point shooter, I don't know. I don't think it's the smartest move, and I don't know if it's realistically going to happen. Now, I guess in terms of realism, say Masai Ujiri wants to make it happen, wants to bring Deandre Ayton north the border, Ayton's heart set on coming to Toronto, all that being in place. Or, well, if Ayton's heart's set on it and Masai Ujiri wants him, it would happen. But just given the competition out there, Ayton, I feel like, is a guy that's on a Phoenix Suns team now. He probably wants more of a focal point. You look at other teams, like the Portland Trail Blazers. They gave up all of their players this season for cap space. I could see them making a run at Ayton. The Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that's been yearly tanking. They want young, promising prospects, and they need some big men. Obviously, they have the number 2 pick this year, so that could be Jabari Young, that could be Paolo, that could be Chet Holmgren, right? That's a big man position. However, they could throw some money at Deandre Ayton as well. There's a lot of teams that sort of have a lot of cap this offseason that have holes at the center position that I think just makes more sense for him to go to and fill. So I don't see the Toronto Raptors actually acquiring him. I've seen a lot of other names I'm going to make videos on over the next few days, right? We got a scant news over the offseason, but back on the grind, back reacting to it. Gave ourselves a couple weeks to sort of let things come into season. Let the rumors marinate, see what people are saying. But Deandre Ayton's a guy I had to react to. A lot of people want him, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think Deandre Ayton's going to be a Toronto Raptor following next season, or think we should pass it, not give him that contract, and focus on other free agents, which we will definitely be diving into over the next few weeks. So that's enough for me. You guys are the best for making this far. Check out the Instagram, the Twitter, the TikTok, all that cool stuff. Anyways, I'm signing off. Cheers.